This is what happens when you get so tied up in your task in building that you lose sight of the foundation. It is the task of a church planter to lay the foundation. And there is only one foundation, Paul says, that can be laid. And that foundation is Jesus Christ. Stephen Ohm points out in his commentary, the foundation is ultimately what stabilizes and unifies the building. Everything is tied into that foundation. Therefore, you are always building in reference to the foundation. When you lose sight of the foundation, your work gets sideways. If you were to pull up my kitchen cabinets at my house, you'd find a giant, ugly gap in the tile. It was my first tiling job, and hopefully my last. I measured and popped my chalk line on the floor, just like you're supposed to. That was my reference to the foundation, if you will, the chalk line. But on my very first row of tile, I accidentally covered up the chalk line with mortar. Lost my reference. Became untethered to the foundation. And my line drifted out of square by about a half an inch over 8 or 10 feet. About 30 minutes later, I realized that I was getting closer and closer to the wall, and my tiles wouldn't fit anymore. Now, thankfully, I noticed it early enough in the job that I could recalibrate and hide the adjustment under where the cabinets would be. But this is what happens when you get so tied up in your task in building that you lose sight of the foundation, right? I lost my reference to the foundation. My building job went sideways. So if your labor in building God's house is done without reference to Christ, it will not last, no matter how zealous you are for the ministry. If you have a particular role that you play here and you're excited about serving in that area and you work in that area without reference to the foundation, it will eventually go sideways. That is why it is my job and Ace's job to always preach Christ and Him crucified. It is our job as the architects of this local church to ensure, to the best of our ability, that you never lose your reference to the foundation. It is our job to keep Christ and His great gospel before your eyes and your hearts, because there is no other foundation.